Greetings. In this video, we will be discussing iNtsomi folk tales. No African can say they don't know about these types of tales because they have been told for eons. We must ask ourselves, why were iNtsomi told? Who told them? When and how? We know iNtsomi were told, and in the village of yesteryear, this was the ritual in every home. At sunset, when the kids were done with their chores and done with playing and the sun was setting, the mothers would prepare the cooking pots for supper. The grannies and others who felt like it would gather the little ones around the fire and tell these tales. All around the village, from home to home around the early evening fires, often in the courtyard before the huts, the animal crawls behind them. You could see the solemn gatherings, little ones of all ages huddled eagerly around the fires, eyes agog, listening with all their might as the teller spun her tale. That was the scene, certainly, of a summer's early evening. In winter, of course, the scene moved indoors. But even then, it was around the fire and therefore in the hut where the cooking was done. So the fireside warmth and the heartfelt fire of story go together. Evening, always evening. In this video, we will hear a few of my esteemed colleagues share their thoughts on this most important aspect of our cultural heritage, iNtsomi folk tales. Each will tell us why they chose to become a storyteller.
It was a happy home because of the stories. I remember all the good times we shared with, we were only two from my parents, my late brother and myself. But because of stories, I didn't know that the other people around us were not my real brothers and sisters. Because there was always fun and laughter. There was always something to talk about. It was a joyous home because my grandmother obviously had this technique to keep us happy and together. So I would say my first memory that comes is unity and fun and happiness that comes when you know that there are people I'm going back to at home who are going to be sharing a story and we are going to be seated and laughing about something.
I've been involved with storytelling now for some time. The reason for that, because storytelling has been part of us since back in centuries. You will remember that our grandfathers and grandmothers used to sit us around the fire telling us stories, because you will know that our history has not been recorded, in writing. It's been passed to generation through storytelling. We used to call it iNtsomi. So, and also it's an easy way to narrate a message to your children. So also, I've been doing this in part of promoting literacy education in our schools. That's the reason that I've been involved with storytelling.
I think storytelling is very, very important in all the nations, in all the countries, to almost everyone under the sun. Why am I saying so? Storytelling is vital. It plays a major role in conversations that are happening in the country. It doesn't matter whether we're talking history, we're talking geography, we're talking science, but as long as the storytelling is involved.
So after 2 years as a teacher, so I was one of the assistant librarians that was working at the library. That is when Dr. Pina conducted some workshops on storytelling, and she spotted me there when I told a story of 3 sisters, 1-eyed, 2 eyes, and 3 eyes. And maybe because my eyes are big, I used to roll these eyes of mine. And then that is when she discovered that I'm a storyteller. Then from then, I had that passion of storytelling.
I started becoming a storyteller while I was still young. At school, I was a tiny child, and I used not to have shoes at school. Even my uniform was always broken and all that stuff. So other kids used to bully me and telling me that I'm ugly and all those kind of stuff. And my way of fitting in, I would always bring stories to them, tell them stories, tell them jokes. They would laugh so that they can love me.
To stories well told, everybody listened, both the young and the old. In the olden days, this was an enjoyable time and people laughed, enjoying the warm sense of togetherness of an evening. These tales were not told during the day. Indeed, it was said that anyone who did that, told Insomi during the day, would grow horns. That was said as a deterrent, a way to make sure that first, work got done during the day. Otherwise, people might have spent the whole long day listening to these tales instead of the chores awaiting them. For there's no running away from the truth. Tales are lovely, they entertain. But life is not all about fun. Work needs to be done. Therefore, the story of growing horns was told by all to encourage the right, correct order of things. But were stories told just to be enjoyed? Or could there be another, perhaps more important reason than fun to their telling?
Of course, it wasn't about entertainment. As I grew up, I realized that the lessons I learned from that are what I could say are the cornerstones of my upbringing. I learned very, very important values from that. You know, families are so disintegrated. I learned that the mere fact that we are sitting together was some kind of connecting us so that, you know, we can surpass any family differences. I know families have their own problems, but I think I still love the fact that I grew up to be a connector because of my storytelling skills. I would tell a story in the midst of the trouble in this family and people start laughing and forget about that. I didn't want to talk to this one, I didn't want to talk this one. So yes, not entertainment only, but value adding and this thing that is embedded in the family communion, I would say.
The traditional role, I would think it's about respect and about values, ethics, culture, everything about us, everything about being an African and preserving who you are and what you are in society.
So storytelling is very, very important, not only for children. People can learn empathy because of storytelling. People can learn how to hold a positive conversation. Nations can learn to forgive one another because of storytelling. And storytelling, even if maybe there is a family feud, the family nucleus is not 100%, people are not getting along inside the family structure, but through stories, it's like a cement. It can unite families. And if it unites families, it unites communities. If it unites communities, it unites the nations. That's storytelling.
Wow. And we as a nation need that cement. We need unity. We need nation building. We need forgiveness. If stories in Somi can help us achieve this so important and much needed aspect of our nation, why? Let us unleash storytellers on the whole land. Let Insomi be told throughout South Africa to help us towards forgiveness and peace, things we so desperately need, to say nothing of unity. Thank you, Mr. NDLAKUSE, for reminding us of the power of Insomi. Long before the watch came, traditional peoples the world over, not only in Africa but the world through, understood routine, order, and its importance in life and living. And they used iintsomi to ensure that routine was observed. But surely there was something else to iintsomi. There was a bigger reason. Children were not told, hey, we tell you these tales because we want to teach you respect and manners. No. But nonetheless, tales were an integral part of educating young kids of amaXhosa, teaching them ubuntu, what it means to be human, or how life is lived, etiquette, etc. It was through these tales that people from an early age learned the community's do's and don'ts, what one was permitted to do and what one was not permitted to do, what was forbidden and what was taboo. Iintsomi taught a person what was expected of them. This means these tales are always a part of raising kids, socializing them, and teach them their cultural identity. The child grows up knowing the pillars and regulations of his community and how to live with others. I'm sure you will agree with me when I say, as my esteemed colleagues have said, storytelling is vital to our living. This was so in the past, it is so today. But how do we, or can we, encourage storytelling? Where do we start to make our communities once again communities anchored on iintsomi?
So I would say that it was important for us to actually go back to basics and encourage our grandparents, our youth, to actually recognize opportunity in storytelling as a way of making children feel proud of their own culture, of their own languages. It's a vehicle that can drive our languages to another level if we can use it.
So you think the community holds the key to the revival or encouraging of storytelling?
It does not have to start with the community. It has to start with oneself. And now from oneself, it has to start in the families. In other words, the family heads, the fathers, the mothers that are busy like heading the families out there. They're supposed to have this leading role into making sure that storytelling happens.
In the past, it was easy to replicate the practice of storytelling. People saw it every day, taking place right before their eyes. The ritual was there in your face, and role modeling inescapable. People do as people do, but today, how is this to be replicated?
Okay. First and foremost, there's a campaign that we are driving. We are saying, read for enjoyment. Okay? So first, you need to enjoy stories. Okay? When you enjoy stories, it won't be difficult for you to pick up any kind of a book and you read. So first, as a storyteller, you need to love reading. Okay? Secondly, as a storyteller, you need to be able to stand in front of people. You know, there's something that we call stage fright. You know, you need now to get tactics as to how to deal with the stage fright. So if this was a workshop to tell storytellers how to tell stories, we will first say, get prepared, okay? Read your material, okay? Understand your material. Understand your audience, respect your audience, engage your audience through eye contact, through your physical gestures. Make them part of the story that you are telling. You know, don't leave them out. Involve your audience. You know, engage them. Make them to feel part of the story that you are telling so that they can feel that they are part of you.
I couldn't agree more with that sentiment. However, before you can involve the audience, you have to have it there. Have people sitting and listening to you, the teller. We need storytellers to tell stories, and we need audiences. People should be flocking to storytelling festivals. How can we get this going?
When I used to have workshops on storytelling, there's one part I used to love, the role plays. You know, one doesn't understand that she's a good storyteller until you see them when they are doing their role plays. Then you can pick up that this person is a good storyteller. I think by getting even a few of them, just to come and have that smolanyana workshops of storytelling, I think that could bring back that art of storytelling amongst our people.
Well said. But not everybody is or wants to be a storyteller. However, for those who do, what skills are necessary for this job? For, like all undertakings, all jobs, it cannot be enough to want to do it. So how does the storyteller get the job done and do so, not only well, but exceedingly so?
First thing that we need to know as storytellers, we must love stories. We must live stories, because when you tell stories, you are not just talking, but you are passing a message. So you need to show the message through your gestures in terms of your expression. So some of the people, they may not understand the language that you use in storytelling, but through your action, through the way you express yourself, it may be easy for them to understand you. So as a storyteller first, you need to understand what message you want to pass through. And as a storyteller, you get yourself familiar with books. You get familiar with what is happening around your environment, because first and foremost, the stories must be able to educate people, must be able to warn people about things that are happening in our lives.
The previous teller is quite correct. Some of the stories we tell come from books. What is the best way of incorporating books into one storytelling?
It depends on the audience first, and most of the time it depends on what kind of stories that audience need. For example, if I'm telling a story to children, I know children get bored very easily. So I have to start maybe with a game or an activity that is gonna draw them to the story. Or if I'm going to read the story from the book, I'll have to choose a book with pictures so that I show them the pictures, and then we discuss the picture before I tell the story. And from the questions and the answers that I give to them, we discuss all about that and the picture and everything, and then I tell them what is on the book.
I don't use pictures when telling a story, because if you use pictures, the children will focus on the picture, not on you, or not on the storyteller. So I asked the children, it was about a lamp. So I asked the children, what do you see on the picture? And the children told me the truth. We see a dog, miss.
Whatever storytelling tools a teller prefers, I'm sure we all realize that the most important one to the practice is the teller. Having decided to tell stories, how does the teller perfect his art?
I would love to talk about, first and foremost, in what in isiXhosa we say, ukuzola, in other words, poise. Before we can talk to the audience, we must pretend as if there is a big microphone stand and someone who is standing in front of us, so that he or she can, just prepare it from us. And now inside, obviously, I'm doing that breathe in, breathe out, that kind of a relaxation mode, so that I can be able to face my audience with 100% confidence before I can even say a word. And most importantly, there is what is known as modulation, the ability of making sure that I'm moving my voice, making sure that I emphasize things correctly. I emphasize words where emphasis is needed. Eye contact is very, very important as a performer in general, because it shows that I am respecting this audience that I'm talking to. And also it means that I have had a debrief session with myself. I have reviewed this particular content that I'm bringing to my audience, and I have maximum respect of the content as well. Also, the gestures. It doesn't matter if it's the facial expressions, it's the movement of my bodily visible organs. It's very, very important, but as long as I'm not overdoing things, because if as a performer, I tend to focus mostly on the gestures, that will mean that I can kill the vibe. I can kill the direction of the message that I'm bringing.
That is preparation. Perhaps just before the teller goes to meet the audience, final preparation therefore. Then what?
The way you tell the story is what brings in your audience in the manner you're telling the story. So I would say that the elements of a good story are firstly into your knowledge of who's your audience, where do they come from, what do they want to talk about, what are they talking about, what would they like to hear. Which means if you don't know your society, you won't find stories that are actually compatible, if I may put it so, with the people. So it means that you need to be someone who loves your culture, who loves your people, who's interested in the history of your society.
To be a storyteller, first and foremost, we need to be people that are having a lifelong relationship with books. Not only studying because I have assessment, I'm studying because I have examinations to write, but I'm studying this because I know if I have this lifelong relationship with books, it means success not only to myself, but to those people that are around me, including my children. And I like to make a comparison between storytelling and also reading aloud. When I'm doing storytelling, it's like I'm performing. I cannot, just because I'm sitting next to the fireplace and I feel the warmth of the fire, and I'm kind of, getting drowsy, that will mean that the message is not getting across perfectly the way that it's supposed to.
Nolubabali Rani reiterates the essential ingredient in storytelling is the storyteller. The dedication of the teller goes far into making the venture a success.
If you enjoy the story and the audience can see that you are enjoying what you are doing and you know what you're doing, and the other thing is to keep eye contact and those gestures, your smile, everything. You have to picture. They have to be in your world. They have to picture everything that you are telling, and you have to carry them with you. And what I do most of the time, I have someone in the audience. I look at someone in the audience that I know. If that person is nodding or smiling, I'm on the right track. And I could feel if the audience is not going with me. So I change the story. Sometimes I know the audience knows the story like this, but because I can sense that there's no energy coming back from them, or there's no energy coming from me to them, I change the story to make something else, or put a certain character just to get the mood back.
So as the teller tells the tale, she is watching herself, listening to herself via the reaction of the audience. She is a conscious and conscientious practitioner, never letting her guard down. The eyes and faces of her audience tell her a story. Is the audience with her or not, interested or not, and she reacts accordingly. Finally, do we really still need storytelling today? Are modern people interested, or should they be?
In modern society, people does tell stories, but without realizing that they are telling stories. Using the media resources, because let's make an example. Some people will see something that is happening now in our area, and they will start recording, taking pictures and posting those pictures in social media. They don't realize that in doing so, they are sharing the stories, they are telling the stories.
Technology is here to stay, and we have to acknowledge that. And what we do with stories, we have to go with time and use technology to tell our stories, because we can't run away. In these days, kids are like TVs, like their cell phones, like their computers. So if we can put those stories in the things that children like, I think it did our job.
There is a digital space that people are always, exploiting. We can use each and every source that we have, even if it's just the pictures of the ordinary storybook, to make sure that we create a platform for storytelling. We don't have to tell stories like the legendary Mama Gcina, the legendary Mamu Philippa, or NOLUBABALI Rani and others, but we can tell stories in our language too.
Language, especially mother tongue, science tells us is crucial to the development of the child intellectually as well as in other aspects.
Storytelling, I would say it's gold, it's diamond in Africa, in my own perspective, because it's indigenous knowledge. It's free, it's natural, it's African by all means, because being African means valuing someone else. The moment I tell you a story, it means that you're going to be my audience, you're listening. The moment you listen to me, it means you're giving me attention. Africans value people, loving, caring, and respect. The moment I start a story, Kwathi ke KALOKU NGANTSOMI, that line only, when I open a story, it calls for people to say hello, to listen. So I would say, being African, storytelling is like one of the most important symbols that make Africans unique. Our stories are different. Our stories have this thing that has to do with how our languages and how our culture manifests itself within a human being. The moment you started story, you have actually showed how important your language is by virtue of just using the gestures, the things in the story, the words, the oral part of it makes me feel that I am an African.
We are the stories we tell. And stories, as we've just heard from my esteemed colleagues, are all around us. But they need you and I to tell them. They need storytellers to help them do their work. Storytelling is our inheritance. Let us honor it and by our actions ensure its continuation. That will be our legacy to our descendants, those who will come long after we are no more.